Opening our schmooze today, there's some immigration news I want to talk about right at the top of the schmooze. The United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, they have opened for the most part today for walk-ins if people need to walk in and speak to an immigration officer, and they are starting to do interviews around the United States. However, they're going very slowly. And an additional, however, the offices in New York City at 26 Federal Plaza, in Long Island, in Hotesville, New York, and in Newark, New Jersey, they're still going to be closed for a shortened period of time. Most of the USCIS offices are open here in my hometown of New York City and Long Island, in Hotesville, and Newark across the river. They're still closed. However, New Jersey is going to be open next week. So USCIS office is going to be opening up next week in New Jersey. New York City, they have announced that they're implementing a deliberate three-step process to reopen. So they're going to open in stages. They're not going to open just one big swoop. The doors open, come on in. So starting June 15th in New York City, they're going to start doing naturalization ceremonies again. That is going to be the first phase. The second phase is going to start to conduct interviews. However, they have not finalized the date in which they're going to start the interviews, and they are seriously considering, not only here in New York City, but I think around the United States, of doing remote video interviews as well. So we'll see if that actually happens. And then the third phase would involve opening up all of the services. And once the processes are in place, we will obviously share them with you. But even when they do open, it's going to be on staggered schedule. It's not going to be everybody just line up and go in. Everything is going to be over a longer period of time. Immigration is going to be open longer, and they're going to have staggered schedules about having when and where you can come in. Now, that's USCIS, and USCIS handles all of the immigration benefits. And now the immigration courts, they announced that the immigration courts are going to be opening this month as well, too. The first immigration court to be opened for non-detained cases, Honolulu, Hawaii. They're going to be opening on Monday, June 15th, 2020. All other immigration courts, as of today, they will be opening as of Friday, June 26, 2020. So if you are need to see an immigration judge, you're in removal hearing, your case has not been scheduled, or your case was descheduled because you were supposed to go during the coronavirus pandemic, expect to start getting notices for probably not late June, but July and August that you'll be going back into court. So you got to get ready for that too, guys, as well. Now, in New York City, I was really happy to hear this. New York City, and by the way, when you hear this, anybody who has been watching Bradshaw Live for any extended period of time knows that I have been talking about this even from my radio days for years and years and years. So if you've been watching, you'll know this was really important to me. So I was really happy that New York City is doing this. They have become the first city in the United States of America to remove the term alien, to remove the term illegal immigrant, and to remove the term illegal migrant from all local laws and all New York City published material, replacing it with the word non-citizen. And that is thanks to a bill passed by the New York City Council last Thursday. Now, for all of those people who are new to our show, I have been talking about this for years. Why? Because there is nothing illegal about being an undocumented person in the United States of America. So that is a misnomer. The only time you are illegal, where you have committed a crime, is when you have been ordered deported, you left the United States, and now you come back and you return. That is illegal. It's also illegal to run across the border. That would be a misdemeanor at a non-border crossing, and then get caught running across the border. That also would be illegal. But people living in the United States who did come across the border without inspection, people who are living in the United States on visas and overstayed their visas, there is nothing illegal about it. It is not a crime. It is not criminal activity. Yet the media, our politicians have all labeled it illegal. It is in our conscience as somebody is committing a crime by every day in our news, in our media, on our videos that we watch. It's always illegal, illegal, illegal immigrant. There's nothing illegal about it. You're an undocumented person, or as New York City likes to say, non-citizen. Now, the term alien is in the Immigration and Nationality Act. The term alien is in the Immigration and Nationality Act. The Immigration and Nationality Act, basically the bones of the Immigration and Nationality Act, they were written in 1952. Everything has been amended from that period of time. And in 1952, they did use the word alien. But to me, the word alien means you come from another planet. You're not like us. You're a little green person with 3 fingers, 4 eyes, and an antenna. That's what an alien reminds me of. But in fact, we're all people. We all bleed the same color blood. We all have the same number of bones in our body. We all have 1 heart, 2 lungs. So we're not an alien. We're all very, very, very similar. We're actually extraordinarily similar, other than maybe we may not look alike. But other than that, we are basically all the same. So when they removed the term alien and illegal immigrant and illegal migrant, I've been saying this for years. I was saying, let's call everybody a non-documented person. But if you want to say a non-citizen, that's fine too. I'm happy with that as well. Because now in people's minds, when you walk down the street and say, we have a problem with non-citizens living in the United States, that sounds like a much nicer problem than having, we have a problem with illegal aliens in America. Illegal aliens, oh my God, they're breaking laws, they're from another world. So I'm really happy. It's about time, and I hope other municipalities, and I hope eventually, if Joe Biden and the Democrats sweep in November, that they too will take out the terms illegal immigrant, illegal migrant, and alien from our laws, from our conversation, so we can have a conversation that is a legitimate conversation. Because most people go around and say, well, why don't you want to have amnesty? Well, I don't want to reward people who are criminals. Well, guess what? 99% of the people that you're going to give amnesty to didn't commit a crime. Meanwhile, Queens Councilman Francisco Moya, a Democrat who sponsored the bill, called the terms outdated and loaded words used to dehumanize the people they describe. And that is exactly what I have been saying for years. Moya said words matter. I think maybe Moya may have been watching Bradshaw Live, because I have about 5 videos, maybe more, going back years and years, where I talk about this same exact thing, where I say words matter. I always said the language we choose basically leads us to the conversation that we're having and how we feel. And now Moya says, the Queens councilman who had the bill changed, he said, words matter. The language we choose to use has power and consequences. It's time we as a city use our language to acknowledge people as people rather than to dehumanize them and divide us. Now, talking about dividing us, that's what Republicans and Donald Trump have tried to do for the last week with George Floyd. Today was the first in a series of memorial services honoring George Floyd. It took place this afternoon. His family, friends, and a number of guests gathered at the North Central University in Minneapolis. Civil rights leader Reverend Jesse Jackson, Democratic Minnesota Representative Ilhan Omar, Martin Luther King III, Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar all attended. Actress Tiffany Haddish, comedian Kevin Hart, Ludacris also attended. Reverend Al Sharpton, the founder of the National Action Network, delivered a eulogy. At a public viewing and a private memorial is going to be held also in Rayford, North Carolina on Saturday. The 4 fired Minneapolis police officers who had been arresting Floyd, they're now in jail. and new charges were filed yesterday against the officers. As we talked about yesterday, Derek Chauvin, he was the guy who knelt on Floyd's neck for 9 minutes. He was originally charged with third-degree murder. It has now been upgraded to second-degree murder. And what that is that you intentionally tried to kill somebody while committing another crime, which I guess would be the assault on Floyd. The other former officers, J. Alexander Kung, and by the way, if he is found guilty of second-degree murder, he will serve 40 years in jail. The other former officers, and also, by the way, don't be surprised if the second-degree murder charge ultimately gets pushed up to first-degree murder. The other former officers, J. Alexander Kung, Thomas Lane, and Tu Tao, they face charges of aiding and abetting the second-degree murder and aiding and abetting the second-degree manslaughter. Now, if they are found guilty of aiding and abetting, these other officers also could spend up to 40 years in prison. Phineas Floyd, George's brother, he called his brother George a gentle giant and would never hurt anybody. Nationwide protests continued following the death of George Floyd overnight. Now, Yonathan today, our very own Yo-Yo, he marched today in Harlem with hundreds of men dressed in suits to honor George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and all the lives lost at the hands of the reckless authorities. Let's watch.
Black Lives Matter! Say his name! George Floyd! 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 Black Lives Matter! 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 Black Lives
Go Yo-Yo. Senate Democrats observed a 9-minute moment of silence for George Floyd today. Senator Cory Booker, the longest-serving black senator, helped lead the ceremony. This week in Washington, D.C., troops lined the steps of the Lincoln Memorial as they also overlooked protests in New York City. Hundreds of protesters were arrested, and according to the Legal Aid Society, have yet to see a judge after being held for 24 hours, which is a violation of the law. And I suspect, although I have no evidence of this, but I would suspect that ultimately in New York City, because they've been held for more than 24 hours and because there's so much sympathy for the protesters, certainly the ones who were peacefully protesting, my belief would be that if you were peacefully protesting, they're probably going to drop all the charges. Those who were looting, those who were not as peaceful may need a good lawyer. Now, the majority of the protests were peaceful, as we talked about not only today, but in the past. There was some violence. Last night in Brooklyn, during an anti-looting patrol, 3 officers were injured in an unprovoked attack. The injured officers are expected to recover. ABC News reported the FBI and the New York Police Department are now working to determine if the attack on these officers was the result of extremism or just regular street violence. Now, earlier Wednesday evening, video surfaced showing at least 3 officers beating a cyclist with the batons in the street. Let's watch. So it's still happening. In Austin, Justin Howell, 20 years old, he suffered a fractured skull and brain damage, his family said Wednesday, after a police officer in Austin shot the young black man with less lethal ammunition during protests over the weekend. By the way, when they say less lethal ammunition, let me explain to you what a rubber bullet is. It is a regular bullet, and they just put a piece of rubber around it. So it is being shot from the same gun. It is the same bullet, just has some rubber around it. It can kill you. It can maim you. And it could fracture a skull, just like it did to Justin Howell, who was peacefully protesting. Now, Howell was a political science major at Texas State University. He was peacefully demonstrating late on Sunday outside Austin's police headquarters when he was shot with what appears to be a rubber bullet. In Los Angeles, a large nighttime rally outside City Hall dispersed, but not before dozens were arrested in a peaceful protest. I think we just showed that video about a minute ago. Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, was spotted marching in Washington, D.C. as well. Earlier in the day, Pelosi held back no punches in criticizing President Trump, rhetorically asking Morning Joe hosts if we live in a banana republic. The speaker criticized Trump's decision to visit the Church of St. John's, which was burned and vandalized by looters and protesters. Pelosi said Trump's actions showed contradictions and inconsistency. We have that video.
If you're going to hold up a Bible and stand in front of a church, then what your message should be consistent with that Bible and that those values.
Meanwhile, in a show of irony, Donald Trump finally got his wall built. That is right. But it's not a wall separating the United States and Mexico. This time it's a wall surrounding the White House. While Nancy Pelosi was marching outside, metal fencing has been installed around the White House complex as protests continue in Washington. Video taken by CNN's Betsy Klein showed a pallet truck stacked with fence panels and a team of workers in high visibility clothing installing the new perimeter. The new fencing comes after other such barricades were reported in recent days, with some protesters moving to gather outside a Trump International Hotel due to the extended perimeter around the White House. Now, President Trump previously denied reports he was rushed down to a bunker at the White House on Friday evening due to the protests, stating, "No, I wasn't rushed to the bunker. I wasn't nervous. Just going to inspect. Yeah, looks good to me." Meanwhile, images of the additional fencing came after the Pentagon ordered forces and bases in the Washington, D.C. area to force protection condition Charlie, which sounds really scary, and it is, because that is threat condition indicating the targeting of military forces or terrorist activity. So our U.S. military in Washington, D.C. is at that threat level. Now, another familiar face made a public appearance to speak about our national upheaval, but it was more positive. This was former President Barack Obama. He joined a virtual town hall yesterday to advocate for the kind of hope and change that once inspired a nation to elect him twice. Let's watch this video.
We have seen in the last several weeks, last few months, the kinds of changes and events in our country are as profound as anything that I've seen in my lifetime.
Now, the Zoom video conference was organized by My Brother's Keeper Alliance, a part of the Obama Foundation, titled Reimagining Policy in the Wake of Continued Police Violence. The event featured several younger community activists, as well as Obama's former Attorney General, Eric Holder. What's interesting is when my daughter called me up, and she's 16 years old, and she said to me, you know, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I understand now the difference between third degree and second degree and first degree, and it was a well articulated, Dad. But when all of these protests are done, how are things going to change? And I said, that is a really, really good question. I don't have the answer. It's for our leaders and for our people to come together and decide what changes need to be done, both in laws and in society. Now, Obama said he is optimistic because so many young people are getting galvanized and motivated. He noted that Martin Luther King Jr., Cesar Chavez, Malcolm X were all young when they got involved in their causes. Obama observed that most of the changes needed for better and safer policing, such as barring the use of strangleholds, are going to happen on the local level. But he maintained that the diverse demographic makeup of demonstrations is now different. This is what he said. He said, you look at those protests, and that was a far more representative cross-section of America out on the streets, peacefully protesting. That didn't exist back in the 1960s, that kind of broad coalition. Meanwhile, Snapchat has joined Twitter in taking aim at what it says are President Trump's incendiary remarks. The social media company said yesterday it was stopped promoting his account on Snapchat's Discover tab because of a tweet he wrote last Saturday in which he stated that protesters would be met with vicious dogs and ominous weapons. The Discover tab is a personalized feed of posts from media publishers and high-profile accounts. It's similar to Facebook's news feed. Now, a Snapchat spokesperson said in a statement, "We will not amplify voices who incite racial violence and injustice by giving them free promotion on Discover. Racial violence and injustice have no place in our society, and we stand together with all who seek peace, love, equality, and justice in America." Now, that's happening in Snapchat. That's happening on Twitter, but Facebook's taking a different position. They are not censoring anything. And now some of Facebook's earliest employees are condemning CEO Mark Zuckerberg's hands-off approach to President Trump's inflammatory rhetoric. In an open letter to their former boss, nearly 36 ex-staffers said the company's policy of allowing political speech to go largely unchecked was a betrayal of the ideals Facebook claims. They urged their former boss to reconsider his stance, beginning by fact-checking politicians and explicitly labeling harmful posts. Now, Facebook has come under attack by current employees, civil rights groups, Democratic politicians for not taking action on posts by the president. That includes a post about the protest over George Floyd. It also includes a Trump post claiming falsely that California is sending mail-in ballots to all residents and there's going to be a huge fraud. Now, in contrast, Twitter has begun adding labels to the president's tweets, and Zuckerberg has said he doesn't believe that Facebook or any private company should be the arbiter of truth or restrict political speech, which he said is already scrutinized. Meanwhile, in another sad situation, the death of Ahmaud Arbery, preliminary hearings for the three men accused of the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, the unarmed black man jogging in Georgia who took a stop to look at a construction site. Well, prosecutors gathered outside the Glenn County Courthouse for the hearing of Greg McMichaels, Travis McMichael, and William Roddy Bryan. Those are the three who are charged with murder. Special Agent Richard Dial of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation said Travis McMichael used a racial slur while Arbery was on the ground after shooting him. Special Agent Dial described how the McMichaels and Bryan chased down Arbery in pickup trucks as he jogged in the neighborhood. The case caused widespread outrage after footage was leaked online, and the McMichaels are facing murder charges. The other man, William Bryan, faces charges of murder and criminal attempt to commit false imprisonment. And what links, besides the obvious of white men killing young black men, what links these two cases is that they were both videotaped. And when you say, Apple and Steve Jobs came up with this idea that we're going to be able to take a phone and with that phone take a picture and a video and play music in our phone and be able to send messages through our phone, I don't think, or maybe he did. I don't know what Steve Jobs thought. He's dead now. But without video phones, none of this would have happened. The fact that we're able to videotape, the fact that we're able to document these crimes in the moment that they're happening is what is causing the changes in the world. Think about how it all happened from the thought of an Apple phone. Meanwhile, the FBI in Louisville, Kentucky has opened an investigation into the police-involved shooting death of a frontline EMT worker, Breonna Taylor. Taylor and her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, were sleeping inside their Springfield Drive apartment on March 13th when officers with the Louisville Metro Police Department attempted to execute a no-knock search warrant. 3 plainclothes officers opened Taylor's front door. They started opening fire, ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. And next thing you know, Taylor was dead. Taylor was accused, what she was accused of was accepting a United States Postal Service package for an ex-boyfriend who police were investigating as an alleged drug trafficker. And the boyfriend used her address. The police said they knocked several times before using a battering ram to open the door. And they claimed they were met with gunfire. They returned the gunfire. And we know the results of, unfortunately, what happened. Jefferson County Attorney Tom Wine said on Friday that while Mattingly's injury was not a result of friendly fire, and that was the sergeant who is charged with shooting Taylor, he agrees to dismiss Walker's charges pending an indictment. Now, Louisville Police Department Chief Steve Conrad announced his retirement on Facebook Thursday after a 40-year career. Conrad wrote, "We are all weathering a lot right now, and I know how challenging this is." And of course, we still have coronavirus. According to statistics from the Johns Hopkins University, there are now over 6.5 million novel coronavirus cases worldwide. 387,000 people have died. More than 2.8 million people recovered. In the United States, we're now at 1.9 million diagnoses of corona. We're now at 109,000 deaths of corona. By the time we are on air tomorrow, we'll probably be at 110,000 deaths. By the time we're on air on Monday, it'll probably be 112, 113,000. Corona is still a huge, huge, huge problem. And finally, there was a protest in the town of Palm Beach over George Floyd's death. Only one person showed up. Her name was Lita Forster. She's an 80-year-old woman, and she was the only person to show up Tuesday at a demonstration to protest George Floyd's death. Forster, she's 80 years old. She was carrying a Black Lives Matter sign, and she came out because it was important to show people that she had no hatred in her heart. She said, "I would have marched on I-95 if I knew about it," referring to Sunday's march in West Palm Beach that trailed along Interstate I-95 before some protesters crossed the Royal Park Bridge into Palm Beach. When asked about the risks of someone her age marching, she said, "I'm 80 years old. If I die, too bad." Forster said she had never protested in her life until after President Trump was elected. "He just brings it out of me. It's so unfair. The country has never forgiven us for electing Obama. White people are not the only people." Let's watch the video.
I never protested till we had Trump. It just brings it out in me. You don't want to come, that's their right. I don't blame them at all, but I can't not to come.
All right, and that is our schmooze of the day. Thanks for watching. For more Bradshaw Live, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.